Good evening, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world. Just making sure my sound is working, and it is. Welcome to another Photography Lockdown Challenge live. It's really great to see all of you from all over the world. If you're not sure what a Photography Lockdown Live is, Photography Lockdown is a series of creative challenges designed to help photographers stretch their creativity and give it a workout. This is usually a live meeting we do every couple of weeks, whereby we do some feedback, look at some pictures and look at some winners and runners up. But we also have the occasional guest speaker, and tonight we have got the incredible Will Burrard-Lucas, who is a wildlife photographer specializing in natural looking animal portraits of African wildlife, but he gets very up close and personal. We're going to be having a chat to him. He's going to be talking about his work. I'll be asking him what inspires and drives him, and he'll also be giving us some behind the scenes stories about his latest book project, The Black Leopard. So welcome everybody. It's great to see some regular faces here. Hello everyone. It's so cool. Look at you all. Wow. It always gets me when you arrive. So I'm not going to hang around for too long on this, because we want to get Will in here as soon as possible, obviously, which will hopefully be in about 15-20 minutes time. As always, please ask him questions along the way while he's talking. I'll be asking him some questions, but also feel free to put your own in as we go. I will try and harvest them as they come up in the chat, and I'll put them to Will at appropriate points. Our current schedule means that Photography Lockdown would actually end on Easter bank holiday for the next challenge. So we're going to extend it. The closing date for the next one will be the 11th of April. That will be the closing date. So next time, you're going to have 3 weeks for the next challenge. And remember, the whole point of PLD is for you to have someone give you a project to complete, so you get the chance to work out. It's not necessarily about winning or who gets a shout out. Before we get going, I do want to remind everybody how important a small regular donation is to help pay the cost of making challenge videos, time spent preparing these live events, etc. Just the cost of a takeaway coffee makes a world of difference and helps keep things going. So tonight I want to give a shout out to Balani Pybel, Eric Poosh, Mark Racine, Olivia Stevens and Helen Martin. Thank you. Your generosity is helping keep this boat afloat. And if you're someone who thinks, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, we really would appreciate your help, because things are a bit tight, as they are for everyone. But still, never mind. Really great to see you all. I'm sorry I'm not giving individual shout outs and hellos tonight, but I really do want you guys to have a look at the breathtaking work of Will Burrard-Lucas, and of course to hear him. There is, by the way, a link in the description area below to his book, where if you were interested when you've heard him speak, to find out more about him, use that link. You can buy the book on Amazon, or you can even get a signed copy direct from Will. But let's just hang out and listen to him speak and ask him your questions, because he is a cool guy. So let me get my next shot up, because then without further ado we can get stuck straight into doing a little bit of feedback. Now then, I'm doing something very wrong, because I'm not very good with tech, am I? But anyway, great to see you all. Let's have a look at some pictures, and I think the place we need to just start with our PLDShine is actually to say hello to Dolores Miller Ellsworth, because I don't know if anyone saw this. You're obviously having a bit of a rough time at the moment, and I think everyone will join in just sending you our love, best wishes, hugs, and we really hope you get a speedy recovery under your belt soon. I get your light at the tunnel thing. You need to read the description with her picture if you want to have a look to see what Dolores was saying. But we wish you well. We wish you a speedy recovery. There's a couple of people who I kind of want to give a bit of a shout out to here, because there is some really cool stuff that you've done, and I just want to bring it to everyone's attention. Annette Vorm, I just think this is amazing. One, I love the picture, but what is truly amazing is your creative thinking behind that shine thing. But also, you were generous enough to share what you did and how you did this in your comments. You put so much work into that. Now, obviously, Annette is someone we see pretty often because, you know, you are good at this. But the reason that Annette is very, very good at this is because of this workload, this level of dedication to, I am going to find out how to do this. There is a link in the description area to her picture, as there is with this one, which I thought was really great. Both great interpretations of shine from Sandra Sim. Very topical, Sandra, too, with the volcano in Iceland going off at the moment. But again, you also put in a huge amount of work and were kind enough to explain what you did and how you did it, because I really did think this is an aerial view. I thought, wow, there's some more eruption going on. And when I saw this, I thought, wow, that's amazing. So there are links in the description area to both of these shots. So if you're wondering, then, you know, click those links. You can go straight to their posts, and it's just really, really interesting to find out how much work these ladies put into their shots. Beautiful pictures. There are, of course, always some beautiful pictures. There aren't many shout outs. We're just going to look at our runners up and winner, really. But we're going to have a little look through a few. I really like this one. I really can't see. I think I got the wrong glasses. Ron Baber. I liked your swan, Ron. I really do. And the thing to me which makes it shine is those ripples in the water. They're really cool. They've just kind of broken it up a bit. My coaching to you would be try and give it a little bit more space. If you could, I don't know. There might have been something bright and horrible and intrusive just above the swan, which would then, of course, upset things. But I do like it. I love the way you've taken the trouble to get down low, to get that reflection, to look across the water at swan height. It is a lovely shot. I really rather like this one too, Donnell, because I like the way you played around with light. It's another interpretation of shine, isn't it? You know, that little pool of light and the shoe shine. There were quite a lot of shoe shine shots, please, and there were some really great ones. But I really thought that this one of Donnell's just kind of showed how he's controlling the light, whether it's with a mobile phone or a torch or something. I don't know, but it is still a really great shot. This one kind of brought my eye. Rafe. Sorry, I'm going to look at my other screen when it pops up, because then I can see Raphael. Apologies. I just thought it was so simple. It's just a lovely, simple interpretation of shine. I think it's really great. I'm just going to bring my little picture up. I forgot to put it in there. There we go. I'm watching you. A very simple interpretation. We've got colours that all work well together. These things are also stuff to bear in mind with composition and all the rest of it. We've got red, we've got blue, we've got yellow. You know, red and blue work, yellow and blue work. And I like this. It's just a quiet, peaceful, sort of twilighty evening shine thing. Dawn McLean. I think this is a really interesting little bit of work, you know, and you've obviously put some effort into this. We've got a very strong shine aspect, obviously, but you know, using traffic and finding the right height to be at the right level. I think that's a bus or a truck or something that has come whizzing through, and you've managed to sandwich the, you know, the star and the green and the lights and the trees going off into the distance, which, you know, I think you did that really nicely. This creative thing with photography, it is all about thinking about where to stand and when to click. Everything in the world exists because of a thought that we've had up here in our heads. And as that thought comes down through the arms and becomes real in our hands, and it's the thinking that goes on behind these things, which I think is so, so great. What do we got next? We got a really great shot here from Stella Fag, which I thought was very interesting. Again, it just sort of shows how much creative thinking you've been doing, you know, to get those prismatic lights to shine a bit of light through a glass. You've done a really good job of making yet another shine. But it's all that thinking, it's all that thought, it's all that how do I make this work stuff. These are the keys. That's really what I'm just looking at in some of these shots. I really like this one of Kimberly's. We had quite a lot of moonshine from our friends across the pond in America. Excuse me. But this one just really caught my imagination because I just like the way you've sort of sat it on that little light or whatever it is, and just sort of cupped it with your hands. It's just a kind of like, I love this stuff somehow. That's kind of how it felt to me. Now here is a lovely, lovely picture, I think. M.A. MacDonald Rose. What more can you say? It is a lovely shot. The way you've got that little shaft of light striking, I'm guessing this is probably your little boy, fast asleep. He really does look so fast asleep and peaceful. My coaching would be, you may have been able to just bring that exposure down a bit. You know, don't be afraid to let the darker areas trail off into shade a little more. It just feels to me like his face is a little bit bright. Always remember to control your exposure. Just think it through. And I know it's like, I must get the shot quick, quick, before it's all too late. Just remember, exposure is a compositional tool as well. You know, how bright or dark your picture is, it's still part of your composition. Another one here which I kind of liked, what's the time, I want to be careful I don't run over, was this one from Tony. And okay, it's not the most stunning scene, but I just love that, the way you've interpreted shine. Because where we've only got the light striking the windows of that one house and everywhere else is in shade, it's like you can imagine the people inside lying in bed and it's like, oh, the sun's coming in and I don't want to get up yet. But I did. I just thought it's just a really simple but quite effective way of highlighting something and adding a bit of a feeling into a picture. I think it's really rather lovely. What have we got here? I love this night shot from Windy Sprinkle. I've never really done a great deal of astrophotography at all. It's something I do want to explore. But again, I think you've got some great detail going on in the sky. What could be more shiny than, of course, the sky at night? I do think it's a great shot. I wanted to give Nan Kelly a bit of a shout out as well, because I really looked at that for quite a long time and thought, what on earth is it? I get the shiny aspect, and I did have to resort to the comments, and then suddenly, now we know that it's a cheese grater, kind of the penny dropped. Jan Roberts. I thought this was another one. It's so simple, you know, you don't have to be clever with an image. Very often being simple with something is a really good way to go, because it helps your viewer. It tells them where they need to look, what the picture is about. And I really, really love this. I don't know if that's something that was there, and I'd love to ask you, Jan, but I don't want to waste too much time on me, because chatting and gas bagging, because we want to get into the good stuff. You're welcome, Nan. But I thought that's a really great shot, Jan. Just the way you've got that little shiny thing on some plain white bricks. Dragon. I loved your interpretation of shine, because it's really completely different about, you know, shining at work, shining in the business, being part of the corporation. I think it's a really, really great creative way. It's a good twist on our theme this time. My coaching would be, the focus seems to be on the pinstripe suit. To me, I don't know, I just feel it might work better on the tie. I don't know what you guys think. By all means, put something in there. I'm unlikely to respond because I want to get on with it. But what do you think? Tie or waistcoat? Tie or pinstripe? Which one do you think works better? But nonetheless, I love your idea and that interpretation. We've got one here from, hang on, what am I looking? This is where I'm meant to be looking. It's another night shot. Stephen West. I thought this was a really great picture. And I love the way you've got this, I don't know what it's called, the ring, the O-ring going on around the shot. That's Portland, isn't it? Portland Lighthouse. I think you could have got away with bringing your exposure down a bit here as well. Don't be afraid. It's like you could have made that just a little sneezy bit darker and more moody. But nonetheless, it's about capturing the right moment, isn't it? Because as that thing's kind of moving around, it's waiting for that moment when it's right straight into the lens. I think it is a really great shot. I really do. What else do we have here to have a look at? I thought this one was kind of good fun from Steve James. I just love the arguing nuns. But again, what I'm interested in is you've kept it simple. You know, it reminds me of the Blues Brothers, you know, when they're in church. And he goes, "Have you seen the light?" It's kind of something like that going on here. But again, you controlled the light. You told us where to look very, very clearly. And again, it shows you that you can make a pretty good photograph anywhere, you know, in your own home, on the kitchen table. Any of you guys who were around PLD last year when everything was all done at home in the kitchen, you know how true this is. So let's have a look at our runners-up for the PLDShine, because then we can go and have some good stuff from Will. I love this one from Phil Saunders Hall. I love the expression of wonder, and again the work you must have put into this, that shiny little face and that shiny box, and the way you've got some dry ice, or you've done something to make that work. But I think it's the expression, that kind of like bemused expression. You can almost feel that emotion. I think it's a lovely shot. Nicely done. Congratulations, Phil. Mary Roseman. I love your jelly beans. I love your jelly beans, baby. I think they're really, really beautifully done. You got nice sort of how you've got the backlight to come through those jelly beans and wake them up in the way you have. I think that takes a bit of doing. It's very simple, but you've made some jelly beans shine. The way you've caught that little sheen on there, and again, look how simple it is. Look at the shadow at the base. Yeah, it's really sort of bringing to life the ladle with your beans in it. It's colourful, it's simple, and it works. Jane Barnes, this must have taken a lot of work. Getting the light to come through the right place and get this sort of splash going on and to capture those droplets. You have absolutely made that shine. I love your use of colours. But that must have been an enormous amount of work to make that happen. I salute your patience and your perseverance. This one, of course, is a little bit of me, isn't it? Jane Kilbride, sunshine, riding your bicycle through the city in the morning and just coming out of the alleyway and into the sunshine. Great piece of backlight. The way the light is coming up the street, we know exactly what this picture is about, don't we? It's about the cyclist. What could be more obvious? And like the shadow. Obviously, all of these shots we've looked at are, you know, technically perfect. It kind of goes without saying, because the foundation of photography is being able to make your camera do what you want it to do. That's just the foundation. That's what you start to build your photography on, how to take great pictures. I've also got one in here. Another of our runners-up is, of course, our lovely friend, Mr. Mel Poor. I mean, it is a great shot. You know, I do love it. Mel, you're so good at these things. The light just coming across the water. And again, look how Mel's positioned himself to get that starburst of the rising sun to come in between the uprights of the structure. You're kind of at just the right height. You haven't got too much movement blur in the water. It's a nice, peaceful, shiny, early morning image. This structure, I do know it, by the way. If anyone's interested, it's the remains of a World War II sort of staging point, I think, for refueling or resupplying France from the 1940s. Great shot. So that brings us on to our PLDShine winner, which to me just jumped out because I just love this picture. This is from Crystal Bartholomew. I just love the light coming in through those trees and can almost feel the shiny sense of wonder in this little child looking through a window. Do you remember doing that yourself when you were a kid? Just, being lost in your thoughts and looking at the world around you and seeing the sunshine. I don't know if it's early in the morning or later in the afternoon, in the evening, but congratulations, Crystal. I think that is a lovely shot. Now, everybody, don't forget, these challenges are not about winning or getting a shout out. They are about you having a workout, practicing your photography. There were so many wonderful entries this time, and it was quite painful trying to trim it down because I knew I had to keep my gob shut and try and keep it fairly short this time. You've all done an amazing job. I really salute everybody who has joined in with the challenge. And I heartily suggest those of you who are not joining in to do it, because this is how you get a workout. You've got to be on the court, you've got to be on the football pitch, and you've actually got to kick the ball if you want to be a footballer, rather than sitting back in the stands and watching other people do it. You need to be in action and doing it, even if you think your pictures aren't that great. Just the very fact that you're in action and practicing, that you're doing it, that is what will grow your skills. Anyway, without further ado, I think we should welcome Will Burrard-Lucas, who I was privileged enough to meet out at Exposure last year. Hello, Will.
Hiya, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. The tech's working, mate.
Good.
We've already been on here, and I've been going, Will, I can't make it work.
Yes, well, pleasant surprise. It seems to be working.
It certainly does. So, I mean, how long have you been doing this, Will? I'm just interested, before we sort of throw into your talk.
I guess since 2010, it's been my sort of full-time thing, but then obviously before that, it takes a long time to build it up before it can be something that supports you. So I sort of got into it pretty seriously around 2003. So 7 years then to build it up.
And I mean, what made you think? I mean, did you kind of like, I don't know, maybe start with an urban fox and progress up to African wildlife, or how did that begin?
Not so much. It's actually the love of wildlife and African wildlife that came first. Actually, when I was little, I was fortunate enough to live in Tanzania for 3.5 years. So my earliest memories are really of being on safari and seeing this African wildlife. And so ever since, I had this love of Africa and its wildlife. And then photography for me came much later and was first just a way for me to document my travels. But then, I always loved traveling to these wild places. And so pretty soon it started to merge and I started traveling more and more just to photograph wildlife.
Got it. Will, I don't know if anyone else is hearing it. Are you able to turn your input, your mic down just a touch? Because
yeah. Let me
kind of popping my eardrum out, man.
Gain. Okay, how's that? Better?
Yeah, I think that sounds a bit better. Yeah. So sorry. So how old were you when you left Tanzania?
I must have been 7 or 8. Yeah.
Okay, so you were pretty small.
Yeah. And then I went to photography much later when digital came along, really. So that was when I was at university.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I'm sure everybody, if you want to ask Will any questions along the way, please do that. Please feel free to do that. I'm going to be looking at the other monitor here a bit, and if it's inappropriate, I'll try and grab some questions which are at appropriate moments put to Will. And I'm sure as you talk a bit about what you've been up to and how you got going with it, it will provoke some questions. I'll certainly interrupt and ask a few. But
yeah, definitely interrupt. I can't see the questions when I've got the photos up, so you just jump in.
No, that's all right. I will harvest some and feed them to you, mate. So I'm just going to hand you over full screen to Will.
Right.
And enjoy Will Burrard-Lucas.
Let me get this working. Okay, we should have some penguins showing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I thought I'd do is I would start by giving you kind of an overview of my journey and how my sort of technique and style developed, and then talk about my latest project. And so I decided to start this story, I guess. This would be about 12, 13 years ago. and this is the Falkland Islands. And this is really where I started experimenting a lot with perspective. And when I was there, I came across this really magical scene where these little rockhopper penguins, they hopped out of the salty seawater, hopped up to this freshwater spring that was making this little waterfall, and they'd wash all the salt out of their feathers under this spring. And I was trying to photograph it, and started with a 200mm lens, and I got this photo, but it just wasn't capturing the scene the way I was experiencing it and really conveying the full story. I forgot that had sound. Sorry. Yeah. So anyway, what I did, I exchanged my long lens for a wide angle, got much closer, and the resulting image. There we go. There we go. There's the resulting image. And so basically, by getting close, by using a wide angle lens, it just created something much more intimate, and you could then see the whole environment that these animals were occupying. And I sort of fell in love with this idea of getting closer, using that wide angle lens. With a lot of wildlife photography with a long lens, it's very shallow depth of field, very narrow field of view, and you just can't feel as sort of present in the picture as you do when you have this perspective.
And this is another thing. Will, do you mind flicking briefly back to the previous picture of you taking this shot?
Yeah.
Because, it's like you would never in a million years, in seeing that shot, imagine what is being produced. Please carry on, my friend. But it's just like, I just want to draw a bit of attention to that. And also, wide angle lenses really do have this wonderful feeling of intimacy, don't they? Because you are being intimate.
Exactly. It's like the way you experience the world through your own eyes. You don't see in telephoto, you see in, pretty much wide angle. So I think that's why it does feel like you can reach into one of these pictures and touch the subject.
That's a really cool way of putting it.
Yeah. So anyway, so I fell in love with this perspective, but there's only certain creatures you can crawl up to in this way without serious risk of injury. And what I wanted to do was do this in Africa with the sort of animals that I mentioned, previously, those animals that I fell in love with, those charismatic African creatures. But how could I get my camera close and use a wide angle lens with animals that would maul or trample me to death if I even got out of the vehicle? And so for me, the solution was kind of obvious. Try to build this remote control buggy, put my camera on top, and use that to get close to the animals. And so I decided to do that. And this is what I created. I called it BeetleCam. And I made this very first version back in 2009 and took it to Africa. And I had no idea how the animals were going to respond, whether they'd get close to it, whether they'd ignore it. But the very first time I tried lions, this young lioness stole my camera, ran off with it. So fortunately, we were able to find it and retrieve the memory card. The camera was a write-off, but the memory card survived, and I got this photo of it. So the project was pretty much over before it started, in that my camera was destroyed. But I had a spare camera which I put on the buggy, continued to get photos during that trip of other animals like elephants and buffalo. But when I got home and published the pictures, this picture in particular, I think really struck a chord with people because it was something a bit different, a bit unusual, particularly at a time you didn't see this perspective very much in wildlife photography. And so I knew that, I was onto something. But, that experience with the lion had been quite traumatic. So it was actually a couple of years before I got around to revisiting BeetleCam. And then in 2011,
do you want to say a little bit, Will, say a bit about, you said that the experience with the lion was traumatic. I mean, how far away are you at that point? You've got your BeetleCam going on, and then you watch a lion come up and just like eat it and make off with it. How far away were you?
So usually with these animals in Africa, you can get to within, say, 40 or 50 meters in your vehicle. They're not so shy that they would run away if you do that. So you can get reasonably close, and then once you sort of get to within 40, 50 meters, that's when I would deploy BeetleCam, and then often these sort of predators in particular, they're quite bold and will usually come and investigate. So the camera will be less than a meter away, and I'll usually be anywhere from 10, 20, 30 meters away, usually by the time they approach.
Do you mind me asking what what was that camera that you mounted on the BeetleCam? Just
so this was 2009, and it was a Canon, probably 400 or 450D. So a sort of entry-level DSLR.
Okay.
Nowadays, I actually use much more expensive cameras, but I've got a much stronger BeetleCam, which has sort of proved itself, and so I'm more confident to put on. Like a Sony A9 is what I use these days.
And so, how do you control the camera?
So early days, I just had control of the shutter. So I basically used the remote shutter socket, connected that to a channel on my remote control, so I could basically flick a switch, and that would be the same as pushing down on the shutter button. So it's pretty basic, just the ability to trigger the shutter and then rely on the auto exposure and stuff to do those settings. But nowadays there's more you can do, particularly as drones came along, which was 4 or 5 years after this. But then a lot of technology came along to be able to control cameras remotely, and so now you can pretty much do anything in terms of controlling the cameras. So anyway, after that first experience, it was 2011, I decided to give it another go and return to Africa with what I hoped would be a lion-proof BeetleCam. So here it is. And here's the first encounter with a male lion on day one of that trip. And I sort of had my heart in my mouth at this point, but this lion completely ignored it. And
that's priceless.
Started to think I just got really unlucky the first time. There's the resulting photo. And
wow.
So off to a great start. And this was then the start of 2 weeks where I just focused on lions with this shell. And the shell took quite a battering during that time, but fortunately the camera survived until right at the very end, where I was trying these cubs. And I'd wanted to photograph cubs because I knew they'd be very playful and inquisitive, which would probably lead to some great shots. But these pesky cubs, they were a bit of a handful. There was 4 of them, and they managed to pick it up and steal it, and took it into this thicket. So at that point, I didn't know if I'd ever see it again. Fortunately, I did find it and was able to retrieve it. But it was another close shave and almost the end of my BeetleCam once again.
I mean,
there's the resulting photo.
Look at this. I mean, it is such a unique perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, particularly at the time, it was, you had to, digital made it much easier to take photos like this because you could just take lots and lots in one go. And so before digital, doing this sort of photography was very difficult for sure. And
But what I think is also fascinating is that whole, thinking it through, thinking, right, I love the look and the feel of this style of lens. So how can we start to introduce that into, other creatures, other animals, where you just can't go and lay on the ground and be right up close and personal. And this is the thing. This is the thing, actually, everybody listening, guys, where I'm always on about your creativity. It's not only just like how you compose the picture, it's all that stuff that the 2 ladies I mentioned earlier have been doing, and so many or more of you in the group as well. But these are the keys to getting this unique, different perspective, point of view, a whole new feeling. Is all that planning. I mean, Will, how much time do you think you spend planning these things? I mean, when you first had the idea, going through, I need to get a remote control camera with a wide angle lens. How much time do you think you spend doing that?
A lot. I mean, planning is so much of it. And often nowadays, planning will even be a recce trip. You go somewhere for a couple of weeks, and it's only when you've been there, if you've not been there before, you have to go there, see it, and then almost go away and spend a few months just thinking about, what can I do there that would be different? How can I go back with maybe some specialist equipment or at the right time of year, or whatever it is, to actually get something it takes things to the next level. And so, yeah, almost everything now is planned. It's very rare that I just get a lucky, spontaneous, shot that I consider good. Almost all of them have had an element of planning. Sometimes down to going when the moon phase is right for this shot I want to get, and having all the equipment all ready, things I've had to spend, a few weeks making and things. So yeah, the more you plan, the more, that's how you, I guess, do take things, elevate your photography.
It's all that stuff that goes on below the surface, isn't it? It's very easy to see, images such as your own, and for someone to think, oh, I'm going to go and have a go at that, but what the shot is actually just that little tiny bit of the ice cube that's poking up above the surface of your drink, isn't it? You're not seeing the rest of the ice cube that's so buried beneath.
Totally. You're not seeing the hundreds and thousands of failed images as well. You only see a tiny fraction of, what comes out at the end, but it is all that a case of, trial and error, experimenting, and trying to, putting a lot of thought into try and get something different. That was 2011, and really that whole trip, I guess, proved the BeetleCam concept, and ever since then, really, BeetleCam's been something I've returned to again and again, and I've continued to evolve the BeetleCam design as well, making it more effective. And so the project that so this is then the 2013 version of BeetleCam, which now had a live video feed, a lot more control. And so now I can see exactly what the camera sees with using a mirrorless camera, and start to pick my moments, much better, and compose my shots with more consideration. And so this is the BeetleCam I then used for my Land of Giants project, which is the project that I was exhibiting in Dubai when I had exposure when I first met you, Mike.
Yeah.
And so, this is a project that I did with in partnership with a conservation organization called the Savo Trust. And the aim was really to document some of these last remaining big tusker elephants. So these are elephants with tusks so long that they sort of scrape the ground in front of them as they walk. And this particular elephant ended up being the star of the whole project. She was actually a female, and just the most incredible elephant I've ever seen. And until I saw her with my own eyes, I didn't realize that elephants like this still existed in our world. And
how many do exist?
So if we're talking big tusker elephants, and a definition of a big tusker is sort of generally any elephant with tusks weighing more than 100 pounds on each side. So that comes from the old days where the weight of the tusk was highly prized by hunters. So about 25 big tuskers, plus or minus a few, live in Africa. And obviously they're old, so at all the time they're sort of either getting picked off by poachers or dying of old age. This particular female died of old age, fortunately, but obviously the others aren't so lucky. But there is another generation of them coming through, so as long as they've got another sort of 10 years of security, then there will be more, hopefully more in the future. But it is a very delicate balance, and at any point an uptick in poaching, and that number could obviously fall quite dramatically. So they're very rare, 25 of them. And in this area that I was working, which is an area the size of Switzerland, there was only 8 of them. And so the only way to find them was to fly in a plane to sort of transect the land to spot them, and then eventually, when you do find one from the air, then try and get close on the land. And I was using BeetleCam in this project to really, I guess, try and convey that majesty and grandeur of these animals. That low down ground level perspective with the animal towering above the camera really achieves that. And you also get those long tusks sort of stretching down towards the camera, which really accentuates that ivory. And so with this new BeetleCam, I also had a little GoPro mounted alongside the camera, which allows me to capture this sort of behind the scenes footage at the same time as the photos.
Such an amazing thing. Well, those 25 next generation big tuskers, Are they all within wildlife parks being, heavily protected, or any of them kind of like outside of the conservation areas?
Yeah, well, the thing with elephants is they actually can roam quite widely, particularly, when it's a dry year and they need to search for food and things. So a lot of them might spend a good amount of time in protected areas. So this is Savo, it's a national park. But, every now and then they venture out of the protected areas. And these protected areas, they are obviously national parks, but they're huge. And so it's very easy for incursions to take place, either, just people grazing their livestock or obviously poachers. So they generally certainly spend part of their time in protected areas, but often lots of them will venture out. There's some notorious ones that will raid crops as well, because they've sort of learnt that out just outside the national park there's all these tempting crops for them to where they can get some juicy food. So they certainly move around.
And Will, what are your feelings on that subject? So, humanity has sort of spread around the planet, and there are so many of us now. You know, you've got the local people who get crops destroyed by a lot of this wildlife, and then they will then in turn go, we can't have this, we've got to kill the wildlife. What are your feelings on that whole two sides of that argument?
Yeah, I mean, human wildlife conflict is a big issue in Africa, and particularly as the human population continues to grow, these wild places do come under greater and greater pressure. And really, it's those communities that border these national parks that are the most critical in a lot of ways to conservation efforts. And I think as long as, these national parks, they do attract tourists, and tourists bring in revenue, by staying in lodges, and these lodges employ people from local communities. So I think as long as that revenue does feed back into these communities that border these areas, so they do benefit from having the wildlife on their doorstep, then I think it can work out. The challenge really comes when you have maybe these areas where the wildlife is so sparse or skittish, or the bush is so thick that tourism isn't that viable. And that's really where NGOs and things need to really support these local people so that they can get by. They don't have to fear for their livelihoods with crop raiding elephants and things. They need the support of NGOs and governments often to get because they just want to survive, really. So it's a challenge, and certainly now with COVID and a lot of tourism has been really badly impacted. So a lot of these people that were relying on tourism have had their income dry up. So it's quite a challenging situation right now.
And so do you think, in your opinion, that is likely to lead to, greater incursion, greater poaching of the elephants and the rhinos and other wildlife?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and I haven't seen statistics since COVID struck, so I don't know what the impact's been. I mean, I would imagine there must have been some places where people have had no option. But yes, I don't actually know any figures off the top of my head.
Sure.
So that was the Land of Giants project. So that's sort of how the BeetleCam, that close-up wide-angle perspective thing happened. And then as I was doing this, another sort of strand of my work that came along was this whole kind of obsession with photographing wildlife at night. And really this came along because as digital cameras were getting better and better and better, and their low light ability in particular started to improve, suddenly you could shoot at ISOs and photograph things in low light conditions where it just wasn't possible before. And so it opened up this whole world of nocturnal wildlife photography. This photo, for example, was shot at, I can't remember, ISO 3200 or 6400. Just it would have been unimaginable a few years earlier to be able to photograph in these conditions. And so it opened up this whole frontier in wildlife photography to photograph animals that are much less commonly photographed and seen. And so I really started to try and document this wildlife and experiment with techniques. And something I became absolutely obsessed with was photographing animals and stars in the same frame. And this is one of my first successful photographs of the sort, and I came back to BeetleCam for this. I needed a low down perspective so I could frame the animal with stars in the sky above. So BeetleCam was perfect for that. I get BeetleCam down in front of the animal, and to expose stars like this, you can't do it with a fast shutter speed. I think this would have been 15 seconds, something like that. And so a photo like this is a 15-second exposure with a flash at the beginning. That flash exposes the foreground, and it only really works if there's no other ambient light. If after the flash, those lions are obviously going to move. If there's any moonlight falling on them, or there's some light from twilight still left over, as those lions move around, they start to then ghost on the picture. But on a very dark night with no moon, like this one, even though it's long exposure, the animals are frozen by the flash, and then nothing else exposes. So I'm able to get that that sort of sharp foreground with the flash, and then the stars with the long exposure. And so I continued to really, I guess, evolve this technique. And so this is then a couple of years later, I'm now using 2 flashes to get some, so I don't have such dark shadows on one side of the animal. And again, with BeetleCam to get the animal with the stars behind.
I mean, how do you go about that, Will? So you're using 2 flashes either side. So have you got flashes on like their own beetles? Have you got beetle flashes as well as BeetleCam?
So in this one, I've got a flash on a flash stand, which I placed. I then, so I had BeetleCam down in front of the hyena. I had plonked a flash on a flash stand on one side, and then drove round to the other side and had the flash in my hand, and basically had to hope that he didn't move off while I was doing that process. So it's pretty challenging because, the chances are I plonk the flash down pointing in one direction, and then the hyena moves and is no longer in the right position. So there's a fair bit of perseverance to get a shot to work in this way.
What would you say your I don't know, your keeper rate would be with this kind of thing?
I mean, another challenge with this photo is I was focusing manually. So the focus is set on the BeetleCam to about 2 meters, which is what I estimate I want to sort of how close I want to be with the BeetleCam to the subject. And obviously I have to then judge that by eye, by looking at the BeetleCam, looking at the subject and thinking, is that roughly 2 meters away? And if it is, I take the photo. Because there's not enough light for the camera to do autofocus like I would in the day. And so this particular technique is quite a low success rate because often that I do it's almost impossible when you're 30 meters away to judge that range. And so often the depth, that field of that plane of focus wouldn't be quite right. So I've got better at that. I've adapted my techniques. This was from 2015, so it was still quite hit and miss. And so I can't remember how many photos I must have taken. Probably maybe 10, or 5 to 10 to get one that's sharp. And then often
that's a pretty good keeper rate, mate, when you're working with something this complex.
Yeah, although often you're not taking the photo because the hyena's in the wrong position. So when you think the hyena's in the right position, then you take the photo, and then it's when you look at the picture afterwards you realize whether or not it was.
I just want to hit you with can I hit you with a couple of questions, Will?
Yeah.
Now, Ada Joff just sort of asked, how do you not startle the hyena? Is the hyena startled? What is their reaction?
So in this case, I'm there in a vehicle. The hyenas come to investigate the camera. And also, in terms of the flashes, I'm exposing stars, which are incredibly dim. So I've got a high ISO. My flashes are pretty much they are on the lowest possible power setting. So they're very low powered flashes. So, the hyena certainly isn't running away after the photo's taken or anything like that. I've sort of obviously observed their behavior and they don't seem disturbed at all. And now I'm doing this with camera traps as well. And I can record video at the same time that I'm taking photos and see that the animals aren't being disturbed. But the brightness of these flashes, to be able to balance it with stars, it's it's kind of similar to maybe a lightning flash in the distance. It's nothing more than that. So these animals, they're not perturbed by it.
Another one which came in was interesting question from Sean Kearney. Can you build a cage like they do for for shark shots? So could you actually do that? Could you have a cage you could be in to photograph from?
Yeah, in theory, I mean, that's not very mobile though. So often with BeetleCam, I will be driving it at to get it to find a clear patch where there's not long grass in front or something. Once you plonk a cage down, you've got to rely on the animal coming to you, and often it might not. So I think something like BeetleCam is much more mobile.
This is the thing, I guess, isn't it? You get yourself set up in your cage, and then the hyenas or the lions or whatever decide they want to go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, often you're always doing this on animals' terms. You can't, even with BeetleCam, you can't really chase them down or anything. BeetleCam's very slow, so you're really relying on their curiosity with BeetleCam to come and investigate.
Well, what started your love with the wildlife, Will?
Well, again, it all goes back to those years in Tanzania when I was 4 years old going on safari, and that's definitely when I fell in love with wildlife, and then growing up watching David Attenborough and things, it all just, I guess, nurtured that interest.
It really is the wonder of a 4-year-old boy on safari. I mean, what a brilliant childhood. I've travelled in Tanzania. I kind of I get it. But just the wonder of being a 4-year-old and going, oh, I've got elephants and lions and things all around.
Exactly. And then after that, having those are your first memories, really. Yeah, that just was always part of my identity then. So, I've always had it, really.
Yeah, sure. Carry on. Keep going. This is amazing.
Yeah, so I guess those were BeetleCam, and but as I sort of alluded to, BeetleCam, it can only really be used with these quite bold animals. So the big predators and things, and elephants, animals that aren't going to run away when they see something unfamiliar moving through the long grass. But I wanted to get these sort of photos, these intimate photos and these nighttime photos with the other animals, those shyer animals. And in order to do that, that's when I started to use camera traps. And when I wanted to, so what a camera trap is it's basically a stationary camera now that you leave out for days, weeks, or even months at a time. And then you've got a sensor which triggers the camera when an animal's in the right position in front of it. And so, and then obviously some flashes and things for those for the nighttime shots. And so, by leaving them out for a really long period and using that sensor just on a tiny area, really, particularly on sort of animal trails, you can then focus your camera on that spot, your lighting on that spot, and you can pretty much compose your photo knowing exactly where the animal's going to be in the frame. And so, you're still it's still the same, I guess, process of composing a photograph. It's just, you're composing it, knowing where the animal will be, and then it's just a case of leaving it long enough until an animal eventually does come through in the right spot. And using camera traps, I was able to start getting this intimate perspective with much shyer animals. And these are animals that, this is a waterhole in Namibia that's not in a protected area. Every time I went to this waterhole, there wasn't a single animal there, but I could see from the footprints that, it was a busy waterhole. But the wildlife here is so shy that if there's people around, you don't see anything. And so it's only by using camera traps that you sort of start to get this window into the world, what animals are getting up to when there are no people around. And so it's possible to then photograph these really sort of shy species.
How long is a long time, Will? You say you leave the camera trap out for over time.
So that project in Namibia, they were there for 4 months, those cameras. This photo I'm showing you now with rhinos, it was out for a month to get that. And the Black Leopard project I'll talk about later, that was more than a year. So the longer you leave it, the more, it's a very simple calculation, really. If you leave it for 12 months, you've got 12 times more chance of getting the shot than if you leave it for 1 month. So it's really, more cameras you can set up, and the longer you can leave them, the better your chances.
How many cameras do you think have you had? Hang on, let me rephrase that question. How does the wildlife react to these cameras lying around if it's not moving? Do they tend to run off with it like the lion cubs did, or do they just kind of pretty much ignore it?
So these rhinos would often knock over the cameras. There was one really grumpy one. Wherever I left a camera in his territory, he would basically send it flying. So you sort of learn that way not to, which ones to avoid. And occasionally it's usually they get knocked over rather than stolen. I can tether them to a tree or something if I think I need to, but mostly, it's people more that you have to worry about. But a lot of the places I'm putting these cameras are sort of heavily protected areas where you've got rhinos or elephants, where there's already a lot of security to protect them. So my cameras are pretty safe in those places.
You don't usually get many passers-by, do you, when we're out in the wilds of Africa, when you're going to have rhinos and things wandering about?
Yeah, exactly. There's no chance at all if you're in a rhino reserve in Kenya that you're going to have a passerby just wander through. They're very secure areas.
It's totally amazing.
Yeah, so
You've got a lot of
traps
wows, by the way, Will. You've got an awful lot of wows and things in the comments. I know you can't see. Somebody just
thank you,
asked,
everybody.
somebody just asked, how many cameras have you lost? How many were destroyed, do you reckon?
I've lost a couple on BeetleCam, or had them destroyed, and then in camera traps, I think just a couple really. But often, sometimes I've left them out for so long on multiple projects that they just stop working eventually. So quite a few cameras have been retired, put it that way.
What was the other one? It's Sean Kenny again was just asking, what's your favourite animal to catch? Apart from your most obvious black leopards.
Well, so if I can't say black leopard, then it's usually the animal I'm actually focused on at the moment. Right now, I'm doing lions, and when you spend day in, day out with particularly the same individuals often each time, you really sort of form a connection with them, I suppose. So yeah, this pride of lions I'm photographing at the moment, I'm really enjoying that. But yeah, before that, the elephant project, I got very invested in that. So yeah, I guess you can't help but form a relationship with these animals when you spend a lot of time with them.
Absolutely. I got another quick question here. Doppler asked, how do you keep your cameras charged and alive and active?
Yeah, so that's the main challenge with camera trapping, is keeping it all powered and everything ready to work at a moment's notice. And so there's particular cameras that have better battery life, particular flashes that last longer on standby. And so part of camera trapping is figuring all that out. And that was quite a learning curve at first. But any DSLR now, if you let it sleep between photos, they'll go several weeks, as long as it's not firing all the time. Part of it comes down to choosing places for your camera trap where you're not just going to get thousands of guinea fowl going past every minute, because that will drain the battery. But picking places for the species you're after, so you're only getting a few shots each night. The camera batteries don't run out first. The biggest challenge is usually the flashes, and so you then either have to have an external power source for them, or be able to visit them, once a week to change batteries.
I mean, a couple of interesting questions have just popped up actually. Do you mind me interrupting along the way?
No, it's fine.
Or are you?
No, it's fine. It's good. It's good. It's good this way, I think.
David Hansen just asked, so as this is remote triggered, you got the flash, then you got your 15 seconds time exposure to let the stars catch up.
Yeah.
So the question is, do you set the shutter speed, etc., in advance?
Yeah.
In a camera trap, because and do you then find you get a whole load of stuff where something's been triggering it at the wrong time when the light doesn't work?
So with star shots, usually will be the shot I've set it up to take, and if the animal comes past when the moon is up or during the day, then the shot will be ruined. So there's basically safe settings where you just have a fast shutter speed. It's just exposing with flash. That will then work day and night. But yeah, to get stars in particular, I will often, know the moon phase, and when I know that it's going to be dark nights, I will then set the cameras to take the star shots. And yeah, it does mean you have a higher failure rate because often the conditions aren't quite right. But when it does work, that's when you get shots like this.
Ada Joff also just asked, are you self-employed? And if so, how are the trips funded? And obviously the cost of equipment, which you burn through quite a lot of it from the sound of things.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm self-employed, but one of the things, over the 11 years I've been doing this full time, a very big part of making this work is being entrepreneurial and experimenting with with income streams and figuring out what works. And when you do find something that works, run with it. And so these cameras that I developed, these camera traps, a big part of my business now is Camtraptions, my company through which I make and sell these camera traps. So really that for the last 6 or 7 years has definitely been the most worthwhile use of my time in terms of, making income. And often now my projects are marketing for my camera trap systems or testing new prototypes. I don't worry so much about selling the images, because for every day I try and spend selling images, actually that day of time is much better spent developing the Camtraptions business. So I guess it's focusing on those activities that do bring in the highest rewards, really. And so but it's all come from experimenting. I've tried hundreds of things, from ebooks to courses, to photo safaris. I think to make a living as a photographer, you have got to be entrepreneurial, you've got to experiment, and it's just a case of keeping on going and persevering until you do find something that clicks. And I developed these camera traps not really to make money from them, but I spotted a lot of people were asking me to build camera traps for them after they saw my pictures, and obviously you spot an opportunity when it comes along.
Absolutely. A couple of people just asked, do you sell your Camtraptions? Well, yes, that's really how Will makes a living. Can people find your Camtraptions through the link below, which goes to the Black Leopard book? I guess you can spiral off through there.
Through my name you can find it. But anyway, Camtraptions, Camtraptions. That gets you to the website, and that's where you can both find out about the equipment, but also we have a lot of information about techniques for using camera traps and how to, what cameras and things and what flashes you need. So Camtraptions is basically a resource for anyone wanting to do this sort of high quality camera trap photography, and obviously all the equipment is available there as well.
That's cool. So just to underline that one, guys, if you're interested, search Will Burrard-Lucas or Camtraptions, one word. You will be able to find out about Will. He's offering you tips and all sorts of interesting, useful stuff, as well as ways you can do this yourself. There's another quick question popped up here. Dragon V asked, have you ever caught poachers or curious humans on camera?
Certainly curious humans. Often even the wildlife rangers, when they're patrolling, will pass my camera traps, and sometimes they don't realize what they are. Not poachers, no, but fortunately, as I say, these areas that I have been working in have been pretty secure. I thought I'd end this sort of camera trappy bit with a photo. Actually, this is taken in the UK, in Essex, so not far from where I am. And this was one of the few UK-based projects. And again, a camera trapping project where I left the camera trap pointing at this stump in a meadow where I knew barn owls were in this area, and left it there for 4 months to get a series of pictures. It's just one of them. That's the great thing about camera trapping is you can basically take any old DSLR camera that you've sort of upgraded from, turn it into a camera trap, and then you can set it up and almost forget about it while you go off and do other things. So this camera was running while I was doing projects in Africa, for example, and then you come back after a couple of weeks to change the batteries, and you've been doing your normal photography, but you also have a whole load of camera trap photos. So very often now I will be doing 2 things at once. I'll have camera traps running and then be doing sort of normal photography while I'm waiting for those to generate results. And this one, it's an infrared camera trap, actually. So what they were saying before about disturbing wildlife, some animals such as owls with sensitive night vision, and particularly one like this that's maybe using this stump a lot. I didn't want to be flashing it a lot. What you can do in those situations is you can convert your camera to an infrared camera. So basically any DSLR or mirrorless you can convert to be sensitive to infrared light. It's a modification that costs about £300. And then you're putting filters over the flashes that only let through that infrared light. And so the light is basically invisible to animals, and it results in a black and white picture. But it's if you want to be completely unobtrusive, it's the way to do it. That then brings me to my most recent project, the Black Leopard. And this is a project that I guess sort of came along sort of out of the blue. I first heard about it in 2018. I was just on a call with somebody in the travel industry, and they mentioned this place where there was a chance of seeing a black leopard in Africa. And that was a sort of jaw-dropping moment for me, because I'd spent a lot of time in Africa. I'd never met anyone who'd seen a black leopard in Africa with their own eyes. They're much more common in places like Thailand and Malaysia, in thickly forested areas where being black allows you to blend into the shadows of the rainforest. But in the sort of savannah of Africa, it's no advantage to be black, and I think for that reason black leopards are much rarer in Africa. So anyway, I heard about this place in Laikipia where they'd been seeing one, and I knew at that point I had to try and photograph it, even if my chances of success were very minimal. It was an opportunity I had to try and get a photo if I could. And so yeah, I just found out more from this guide, and the first moment I got, I headed up to Laikipia, and in January 2019 I got out there. I had 5 camera traps ready to go, and they were actually the camera traps I'd just been using for that rhino photo, so I already had them in the country, which obviously meant I was sort of right place, right time, with all the equipment ready to go, and set up the cameras. So basically, I got there, I spoke to the guide and owner of the camp there at Laikipia Wilderness Camp, and he introduced me to the neighboring landowner, a lady called Louisa, on whose land this leopard was basically hanging out, and her team of rangers. And there was also a leopard researcher there called Ambrose, and they all sort of basically showed me around, showed me where they'd been seeing the leopard, and then I had to figure out where to put my cameras to sort of get hopefully some artistic photos of this black leopard. And so I set up these 5 cameras, and after a night or two, I didn't have a photo yet, and I was beginning to really think, this is too good to be true. If I was to get a, there's no chance I'm going to get a photo of this animal. But then after 4 nights, I checked the last camera of the 5, and I was looking on the back of this little camera screen in the bright African daylight, and I could hardly see anything on the back of the camera but these 2 eyes in the middle of the frame. And it took a moment to sink in that I was looking at this black panther. And it was basically, I guess, completely a dream come true, and definitely took a while to sink in that I'd actually got this photo. And thereafter managed to get a couple more photos just near where that first one was taken. And so this whole trip, where it was kind of a recce trip, really, is what I thought. And so I was out there for 2 weeks, and within 4 days I had that first photo, and a couple of days later this one. And then I stopped getting photos of the black leopard and started getting photos of this big spotty male leopard. And the black leopard at the time was a young male, and at that age he was basically getting pushed around by bigger males. And so when this guy came along, the black leopard basically disappeared from this area, and I started to think I wouldn't get another photo of him that trip. But I was very happy with what I'd got already. But then just before I left, he returned, and this was a camera that I had set up for exposing the night sky as well. And so he came by as the full moon was setting behind the horizon there, and managed to get this very atmospheric photo. And then, because the moon was out by this point, I then also had cameras set up just to do the not expose the night sky, because obviously the chances of it ghosting and things are quite high. So I then also focused on just doing this sort of minimal lighting just to pick out those eyes, really. And this was then the last photo from that trip, where I sort of used snoots and things to really just create this puddle of light. And I guess a photo that I tried to capture the essence, I guess, of this animal that sort of so embodies the night. That was the first 2 weeks. It was obviously kind of a dream, really, to achieve these results. And I then came back home to release the pictures. But this was this once in a lifetime opportunity where I knew where this black leopard was. So I certainly wasn't content to sort of end the project there. And so actually, even after that trip, when I came home, I left my cameras out in Laikipia running, and actually they would stay running for the best part of a year. For a whole year, I had between 5 to 8 cameras running the whole time, moving them around as I was trying to get more and better shots of this black leopard. And what I really wanted, of course, was a black leopard under the starry night sky. And so that was a sort of obsession, really, that I worked towards for quite a long time as I kept returning to Kenya time and time again, moving the cameras around to try and get this photo. And it turned out to be quite
Will, are you showing us anything? Because right now the screen's gone black.
Let me try changing the photo. Can you see a photo now?
Yeah, one's just appeared. Sorry, we just had a black screen for a moment, but I think it's gone black again.
Yeah, there's a leopard in that photo. You might just not be able to see it if your screen is too small.
Oh, right. I certainly can't. I don't know if anyone else can. I'm not picking it up on mine.
That's the thing with this black leopard. He reflects so little light except for those eyes. So yes, you probably just can't see him.
I couldn't see him. Apologies. Everybody else could. It's me.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I didn't want to. I could have exposed them much brighter, but really it was just trying to stay subtle with these photos. Getting a ton of comments, I see.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all right. Yes. They're used to me being a numpty.
Anyway. So anyway, it's this photo with the black leopard under the stars that I wanted. And very quickly, I got the photo of this big spotty male. It's the same one as the one before. And we reckon he was the black leopard's dad, actually, this guy. But whenever he was around, the black leopard was nowhere to be seen. And really, I guess it was weeks that turned into months where it was this guy that was hanging around and the black leopard would come by very rarely. And so my opportunities to get the photo of him under the stars when all the conditions were perfect for that photo were becoming fewer and far further between. And so many things really needed to come together, as I was mentioning before. You needed, of course, a clear night. And very often, particularly at this time of year, this is now like April time, and that's kind of the onset of the rain. So very often, conditions might be right, but it would be a cloudy night like this one. And so you still get atmospheric photos, but not the star photos I was wanting. Or on other occasions, the moon would be above the horizon. And this is an example of what happens if you have a camera set up to photograph, to expose the stars, but there's a moon. You end up with this translucent animal where the flash has gone off, exposed him. He's then walked away. And then the sky has then exposed behind him. And in this case, I quite like the photo. It's kind of you get this sense of this ghostly animal, and really these leopards are so elusive that they are a bit like ghosts. They're often there and you just have no chance of seeing them. And then this is another example where you've got moonlight on this night, and so this photo worked because behind the leopard it was so dark still, so the moon has exposed the sky and a bit of the background, but the flash was bright enough that it exposed the leopard, and then none of that background really shows through him.
And it must be quite a task to set up your flash in such a way that you've got your light angle right, that you don't end up, as you get closer to the flash, the light is far more intense, and so there must be some danger of like getting a burnt out patch going across the grass up to the leopard.
Oh yeah, so you've got to do a lot of, I guess, trial and error with getting the lighting right, and so looking out for any distractions that might catch the light and moving the light. So that's a great thing about camera traps, really, is that you can put in hours really to perfecting the lighting, and you set it up, you maybe leave it for a few nights, look at some of the resulting photos and realize actually you need a darker foreground, and so then you might move the flashes a bit or put a snoot on them, or turn down the power. So a lot of it is a kind of iterative process where you are gradually improving a setup, or when you sort of feel like you've got that shot, you then move the camera and try for a different shot. And so in this photograph, I'm trying quite intentionally to keep I guess, the foreground in front of the leopard quite dark, and then really have the leopard stand out of the frame. And with the black leopard in particular, I had to really be quite careful really how I exposed the photos, because often if I didn't have enough light, he would be completely invisible.
As well as, I guess, your backlighting a bit as well, just to try and give some sort of texture and shape and definition of this outline. So
exactly.
I'm just intrigued by that, actually. So you're backlighting as well as pushing a bit of light in from the front.
Yeah, I've probably got most camera setups in this project. I'd have at least 3 flashes. So it's kind of like any studio photo, like key light, fill light, and backlight. And so this is a photo, everything almost came together for the staff shot that I wanted, except the leopard went through the wrong direction. So without his eyes in the frame, you really can barely see him. But yeah, in this one, I guess, you can see I've got some backlighting coming from the right-hand side, which does just pick him out a bit. But yeah, unfortunately, he was facing the wrong way. Yeah, and then, in fact, the next photo I can show you is a bit of the behind the scenes. This is a setup I then wanted to start showing more of these amazing environment, because Laikipia is just beautiful. This is a spot on Suyan Ranch, and I wanted to get a photo of a leopard that would show more of the environment. So you can see I've got 2 flashes in this setup, no backlight on this one, and then the camera in the middle there, and it's this is the resulting photo from that setup. But yeah, often it wasn't just the leopard I needed to cooperate. There was other wildlife in the area and certain pitfalls that came with that. So this camera trap that I just showed you was only operational for a few days before the baboons discovered it. And
I'm just going to ask you about that. Do monkeys and baboons and things make off with stuff? Because they are the ultimate thief.
They are quite pesky, and I hadn't actually had that many problems with them, so I had started to, I guess, get complacent. And so this is a camera trap setup. I'd usually have made it wireless, but I just used a wired sensor on this one, and the baboons discovered it and dismantled it very quickly. So yes, that was another Anyway.
I had a baboon jump down out of a tree. I hitchhiked through Africa a long time ago, and I don't know where I was, but I put my pack down and had undone the top. I was in Malawi and was really excited because you could buy jam in Malawi, and I'd bought a jar of jam, and this bloody baboon jumped down out of the tree, just reached into my pack, stole the jam, just got out of arm's reach up in the tree, undid the lid, and just sat there looking at me as he scooped it into his mouth. Yeah. There's nothing I could do about it. They really are extraordinary animals.
Yeah, that can be quite a menace, baboons and the vervet monkeys, especially once they learn that they can get food from people, they can be very devious and very opportunistic.
Well, what is the origin of the black leopard? How do black leopards come to be?
Yeah, so any leopard, it's just a normal leopard with this gene for melanism, and basically in leopards it's a recessive gene, and so you need both parents to have the gene. And if both parents, they can be spotty leopards, but if they've both got the gene for melanism, then there's a 25% chance that the cub inherits a gene from both sides and then it's black. And so jaguars, for example, which are the other big cat that you can get in black form, in them it's actually a dominant gene. So if the jaguar gets the gene from either parent, it will be black. But with leopards, it needs to come from both parents. And so that gene needs to be quite prevalent in the population for you to have much chance of getting a black leopard. And in places like Thailand and Malaysia and India, there is a much greater prevalence of this gene. And so you get a lot more black leopards in those places. But in Africa, it's pretty rare. And so obviously in this area, there is that gene. And so, 2 leopards came together and they both had the gene. And so that's how we ended up with this one, this black leopard. And there's probably a handful of black leopards in Laikipia. But what was unique about this one is that he had his territory near Louisa's house, and people were seeing him regularly enough to sort of figure out roughly where he was spending his time. And that's how I was able to get the photos. But, it's really only because they had seen him and then basically told me where they'd been seeing him that I had any chance at all of photographing him. And in that time I was working on this project, so that was about a year. I was going backwards and forwards, and obviously spending a lot of time in this area. In that time, I saw him 5 times. And 4 of those times were at night. So I only saw him once in daylight. So you couldn't sort of see how, just bumping into one of these in Africa would, it's you can spend your whole life even in this area and never see one.
Must give you goosebumps.
Yeah, certainly. When I first saw him, it was pretty incredible. That's how I start the book. Actually, is with the account of when I first saw him for the first time, and it was just, unbelievable because, you basically it was night and you just don't see anything except the reflection of his eyes until you're right on top of him, and then he starts to move, and really all you're seeing is a cutout black thing moving in front of the torch lit vegetation, really, because he's just so dark and so at one with the night.
Absolutely amazing, Will.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
There's a behind the scenes photo. This is actually an infrared camera I had set up because I just had it spare, and I just set it up behind these 2 cameras to capture the behind the scenes. But what's interesting is in infrared, you see he still has got spots, but they're called shadow spots, and so all his fur is black, but he still has darker patches of black, which are more obvious in these infrared photos. But this is a photo. This is a setup where I had 2 cameras, as you can see on the left there. One was low down to get him with the sky behind him, and then one was higher up to get him below the horizon. And so that way, if the moon had come up, that camera that's higher up would get a shot, and the lower down camera is getting the star shot that I hope for if the conditions were right for it. But I returned to this camera setup after I'd been working on this for 6 months at this point, and still didn't have the star photo. And then when I saw this, I saw it looked like the conditions had been right. And then I checked that lower camera. And so the photo this lower camera got at the exact same moment that this behind the scenes photo was taken is this one. And pretty much, the photo I'd really been working towards getting. And then a couple of nights, again, it was another clear night with the moon down, and the same camera captured this photo. And so, that's the pretty much photo I'd been hoping for, and certainly not a photo I got better than in the year that I was working on it.
That's quite an accomplishment, isn't it? Just think, we were talking about the little tip of the iceberg. That is the tip of the iceberg. That represents 1 year to take that photo.
Yeah.
That's dedication.
Yeah, I guess it's what you got to do to get anything. I guess noteworthy is you just got to, and it took a year, but being in this place, for me it never felt like work. This is where I'd happily be on my holiday, is in this remote wild place looking for animals and stuff. So it's not like it's not a hardship, I suppose. But
no, absolutely not. I mean, this is. I was about to say, what gets you out of bed in the morning, Will? What inspires you? What makes you want to do this stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I do it just to be able to spend time out in Africa in these places.
Absolutely, and I totally get it. Africa's an amazing place. I haven't been back for a long time, and I miss it dreadfully. It's just there's nowhere else like it. I can't explain it. It's just magical. We'll have to get together and have a beer when we're allowed to. Because tell me stories of Africa, particularly Tanzania, because I love Tanzania.
Yeah, no, well, for sure. There's obviously, you sort of it gets in your blood when you've been there once. It's never the last time, because that's the other thing about Africa is everywhere, wherever you go, everywhere's got something different, and once you go once, then you want to go to the next place. So whether you go to Namibia, which couldn't be more different to East Africa, or the bush of Zambia or the Okavango Delta, there's just so much diversity and variety there. So I'll certainly never get tired of it.
I can completely understand that one, Will. I don't know. Have we reached the end of your?
Yeah, no, we have pretty much. So, I think we pretty much have. So there's the the book cover and the link to the book. Yeah,
that was my next question. So if anybody's interested in supporting Will and and also in this amazing story. Then go have a look at the Black Leopard book. And if you'd like to find out more about Will's work in general, then you can find your way to him from that website, and of course just by searching for his name.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely fantastic. Will, come back on screen with us for a minute.
Yeah, let me.
Let's see you.
Yeah, one sec. Where is my?
Here he is. That's better. That was really fascinating. It's interesting. There's a whole bunch of comments flying in at the moment. Lots of people have been in Africa. I think that's really cool. Who is it? Emma's just saying Africa changes you forever. Thanks, Will, for sharing your story. Yeah, that was absolutely amazing. We're going to have to wrap it up about now because we're getting close to 8:30. But if anyone's got a last-minute question for Will, are you okay?
Yeah, for sure.
For a couple of questions. If anybody's got one they want to throw out, you've got about 4 or 5 minutes.
Well, I see lots of nice comments there. So thanks everyone for being so kind.
Will completely blew me away, by the way, you lot, because when I arrived in exposure for the first time, and I'm kind of walking around just a little bit shell-shocked and sort of going, oh my word, what am I doing here? And I was gawping at this incredible exhibition of his work with the big tuskers and the rhino. And then this guy walked up and went, Mike Browne, I'll be watching you on YouTube. It was Will, and that's how we came to meet. It was an incredible thing. You were in Tanzania, I think, this year, weren't you, during exposure?
No, I was in Kenya.
In Kenya. So you're in Africa again.
Yeah. So I've got basically now moved on to a new project, so focusing on lions now in Kenya, and hopefully in a couple of years there'll be a new book on lions. But yeah, that's what I'm working towards, both daytime and again a lot of nighttime stuff, I hope, because lions are another animal that's mostly active at night, so I feel there's a lot to be done there. So that's the next thing.
Really hard work. Somebody, where are we? Darren Sangster asked, do you have a YouTube channel of your own?
Yeah, so I'm Will BL on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Will BL is my sort of short URL.
Okay. If people were to search Will Burrard-Lucas in YouTube, I guess they'll probably find your channel there too.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you'd find me.
That's really cool. I'll make sure I put a link in this across to your channel. There's a card there. So
I try and put something on there maybe once a year. Video is a lot of work, which I don't find much time for.
Video is a painful lot of work, and he and so many others have said thank you so much for joining us. Couple of quick questions. Oh, Crystal Craig's asking, what is your wide-angle lens? Just how wide is your wide angle?
So for elephants, I might go as wide as 16 millimeters. A lot of those leopard photos were 24 to 28 millimeters often to get the stars in.
And it's kind of like, it's the one that works, isn't it? I guess there are so many things. If you've got a camera trap, it's kind of like the animal. I guess these are all calculations, I'm guessing, you put into place anyway. You've got your camera trap. You think you're after the black leopard. You know the approximate size of the black leopard, so that kind of suggests where you need the camera to be with the width of the angle lens in order to get the shot that you're pre-visualizing in your head.
Yeah, exactly. I know exactly where he's going to be when he triggers the camera, and obviously after a while you get to know how high he is and things. So compose accordingly.
Moose Harper just asked, any plans to try capturing tigers with this?
To be honest, there is a ton of incredible wildlife photographers in India focusing on tigers, and they have the access and they're just already doing such a good job. I feel like for me, there's ideas I have to do things in Africa where my time's better spent. So while I'd love to spend some time photographing tigers, right now I don't have any immediate plans to do so. But there's plenty of as you've seen, sometimes these projects take a year or two, so I've got to be quite selective what I pursue.
Well, I think we're probably coming to the end of our hour-and-a-half session. So, Will, thank you ever so much for joining us. Please, everybody, go
Yeah,
over, have a
thank
look at
you.
Will's stuff, go find him on Instagram and all those other places, and show him a bit of love and help support him, because he's doing a great job as well in just showing people what there is out in the world. And we live in a fast-moving Instagram flick next sort of a world. And we kind of, there's a wonderful poem, and I can't remember who it's by. We have no time to stand and stare, and I think that's so true. And it's great to see somebody who is spending time somewhere and standing and staring and spending a year getting this amazing picture, and telling us more of the things that are out there, things that should be so much better protected and looked after,
Yeah.
and
No, well, thank
preserved
you.
for all of us.
Yeah.
Anyway, Will, thank you so much for joining us,
Yeah.
and
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
everybody else who's here, who joined us live tonight, thank you all for coming. I do hope you enjoyed listening to Will. Well, I know you did. I can see that. There's no question about it. Your next challenge video will be going live fairly soon. Those of you who've signed up for a newsletter, you'll be getting an email fairly soon, and I've got to make sure I get that video live before the machine sends you the email. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble. So once again, stay safe, everybody. Be well. Thank you for being here. You've got 3 weeks for this challenge, remember, but it's all in your email. It's all on the page. Everything's all sorted. Please shoot images for the challenge. Don't go to your archives. I want you to give those creative muscles a workout. Finally, once again, it was good to see you, Will, and thank you so much for giving us your time so generously. It's really appreciated.
Thanks, guys. And if I didn't get to answer your question, because I'm sure I missed some, just DM me on Instagram or Twitter or something, and I'll try and get back to you.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Be well,
thanks,
everybody.
Guys. Yeah.
Thanks, Will.
Bye.
See you soon. Take care.
Cheers. You too.
Let's have a look. We can stay there if you like for a minute, Will.
Okay.
I've ended the stream, so we're good. But
okay, we're definitely off air, are we?
Yeah, no, we're definitely off air. There's a bit of a lag, and then it will disappear. But we are